So you found a business to buy and your lender gave you the initial okay. Now it's time for the dreaded business plan and projection. Now the SBA requires detailed projections and business plans to approve any SBA loan to buy a business. Now this is something that you can hire us for if you want, and we can do it for you. And the payment even counts towards your down payment or your equity injection. And these can be tricky because these are things that your deal can get stuck on. So if you don't write the plan right, you could get stuck in a lot of back and forth between you and the underwriter. You might accidentally create additional questions when you're writing the business plan. Sometimes if you say something like, well, we're gonna do this to cause growth, then that's just gonna trigger more questions. So you wanna make sure that when you're writing it, you're not doing things that are going to trigger a stream of questions. You wanna be careful about how you word your business plan. The goal here is a one and done submission. Now we start ours by doing the projections first, just because the projections give you some insight into the business, just the process of creating the projections and things that might go into the written part of the business plan. So we typically start with 3 years of historical monthly financial statements from the seller, and we use those to build our forward projections. So starting with the revenue, we apply some type of growth rate. We're usually pretty conservative. We usually put 3 to 4% revenue growth as our standard. And so we'll grow revenue by that 3 to 4% using the monthly financials to insert any seasonality that might be into the business. And we put the seasonality in by you grow the numbers year over year. So January over January, April over April. So that way the seasonality is fully caught in the model. Then for fixed costs, we usually use a just fixed growth rate, say 2 to 3% for fixed expenses. We'll put in the actual rent number that we're expecting, the actual insurance rates that we're expecting. And then for variable costs, we look at the historical financials. We see typically what they were as a percentage of revenue. And then we just apply that percentage of revenue to the revenue that we have forecasted in step one. And then we go and we enter things like the new owner's salary, our expected CapEx expense, the interest expense from the loan, and the remainder of the loan payment when we're calculating after loan payment cash flow. Now, if everything looks good there, your future years are hitting your debt service coverage ratio targets. You also in there make sure that you include the seller notes that are on standby. So you want to make sure that you're still hitting a required debt service coverage ratio even after additional loan payments start to kick in the future. Then it's time to start the written portions. Now, typically, you don't want it to be too long. The written portions usually between 8 to 15 pages, depending on the business. The first section is the executive summary. This is going to give an overview of the services offered, the customers, the management team, and the financial highlights. Then we're going to go into a more detailed overview. Now this is going to include the legal structure post-acquisition, who are the owners, what is it going to be an LLC or is it going to be a corporation, how's it going to be legally set up, what state will it be registered in. And section 3 is going to cover your operating plan. It's going to give an overview of the organizational structure, the suppliers, the customers, how you're going to actually run the business day to day. Next, we're going to want the market research. We're going to want industry analysis. We're going to look at competitors. We're going to look at trends. We're going to look at where the industry is going. We're going to look at your particular market, what's going on in that industry, in the market that you're going to operate. And this part's going to include a detailed list of all the services offered by the business. And finally, growth strategies. In this strategy, you're going to talk about your growth plans and how you're going to drive business going forward. And this is one area where you want to make sure that you don't say anything too broad. If you say something broad, like we're going to increase marketing and sales efforts, then the underwriter is going to ask you, well, what are you going to do to improve marketing and sales efforts? So this should be detailed. If it's not detailed, if it's too broad, you're just going to create some questions for the underwriter, which is going to add time to your deal. Each back and forth with questions could add 1 to 2 weeks to your closing timeline. And that's it. Easy, right? No, I find the business plans really hard. It's something that's really hard for me to do. I'm fortunate that I have a really great partner who is really great at writing business plans and that our team is really good at putting together projections. It's definitely one of the harder processes of the business buying process. So again, if you want to hire us to do it for you, it even counts towards your down payment or your equity injection.